See you.
I haven't seen you for so long.
It's been a while.
Yeah, you're going to be taking next time.
Wendell, you starting your own sign-up sheet?
Yeah.
Oh, if anybody wants to sign up, you've got a sheet up there. And nothing really got worse all the way down here. Wendell was probably Wendell was like the worst. Really? That little hill right there coming up over. Well, they got that cold front pushing in, and I think what they did is going to turn everything. They said sometime between now and midnight. Yeah, because it was the rain and all that was right in front of it. You get that cold spot right behind it. When I sit up on the hill, it's horrible.
But it's nice in the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
Trade-offs.
I know, little trade-offs here and there. Just your nigga. 3 years now, has it been 3 years?
Yeah.
You weren't, but he was. Yeah, well, who's that guy? Yeah. Well, that's the figure, because they did the emergency alert, and then the sheriff's department did it. weather alerts there too. The HJ had it on the radio. They have the emergency one. You're not gonna get a schedule before you get back to session. Well, I'll tell you, at 3 o'clock this afternoon, down here on the flats, it was really, really bad for about 2 hours. And then now it's coming back up. It was right around 30 and it was just helping. But right there, mountain guys, they can get pretty active. We had up on the hill, we had a couple of, I've got that USB backup with speaker, and you can hear it hitting it, where it was just the USB was kicking in and keeping the computer running. I was like, because usually if we lose power up there, there's only 5 of us that live up there. We can be a week before they'll get power back on.
As I was coming up and down the hill, from the snow to the rain.
Oh, yes, we spoke on the phone a few times. You're going on vacation next week, so we can't live. Legislative services wants our corrective bills next week.
Oh, post it up that way.
You sent it between yesterday. You sent it, okay, no, I haven't got it. That would be good. I got things like California and Florida. Right, they don't get a say.
Somebody gave me a shirt. I have one of them too, didn't have time to switch. You do a sign up,
I had a voice recorder and I can also take notes.
Looks like the eye says how many people are on the page.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I'll apologize for being late. I was in Hagerstown all day and just got back. So we appreciate all you coming out in these weather conditions, but most ever used to these weather conditions, so. So we're gonna basically follow the same rules we follow in the past. This is not a debate, this is to hear what's on your mind, and we'll answer or not answer if you have a question. But we're not gonna debate issues, or what I consider, we consider to be a debate. We'll go by the sign-up sheet. We ask you to come to the microphone, state your name. If you're representing a group, tell us who it is. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Delegate Beitzel to make some comments, and I'm going to tell you what we met with the Garrett County Commissioners yesterday. We'll tell you what's on their mind, so that way it's twice we're getting this out to the public of what the county's asking for. So with that, I'll ask Wendell to say whatever is on his mind.
First off, I thank you for coming out also. Clearly it's a bad evening, but it would have been really difficult for us to reschedule this, and we want to make sure we give people an opportunity to meet with us before the session. We do this every year. I know the college closed today early, and the school closed early. We receive calls and ask us if we're going to reschedule, but to get the word out to reschedule, and then to be able to reschedule this and let everyone know before the next session, which starts January the 11th on this year, it would have been difficult. So again, sorry to put you through this foul weather tonight, but I do appreciate you turning out. First, I'd like to introduce my main staff person in Annapolis, Chris Lokey. Chris drove up from Annapolis today, and appreciate him coming up. Kim usually takes care of this. Is George's main staff person in Cumberland, and so Kim had, her mother was sick and she was in Baltimore, and I used a little prerogative today when she called about whether we were going to cancel. George was in Hagerstown, and I said, well, Kim, leave it up to you. If you don't, we have it covered if you don't come, so I think she would appreciate it. She didn't have to drive up here tonight. As George indicated, we do this every year before the session starts to give people an opportunity to come to us and express any of their concerns or requests for legislation. We met with the county commissioners yesterday. They presented several items to us that George is going to explain for legislative changes, and so we are a county that has a county commissioner form of government, doesn't have code home rule, so any changes that the county commissioners make, they need to come to us, and we need to take it to the General Assembly and pass the laws through the General Assembly and get the governor to sign in order for the commissioners to change most of the things that they deal with that's in county code. There are some issues that the commissioners can't deal with, which the states reserve for themselves, and one of those things is liquor license and liquor issues, and so the Garrett County licensed beverage folks are here tonight, and I think they have some requests also. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to George, and again, thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you, Wendell. As was said, we met with Garrett County Commissioners yesterday, and they requested several things that be considered, so I'm going to rattle them off real quick. In the law right now, we have a snowmobile law where you can cross roads, county roads at an angle to connect to trails. They want that to also include all terrain vehicles, mainly looking at farmers. They can cross the road or go up the road, but several, I think they're requesting 2 miles from getting from one field to another field. So it'll just be expanding existing law to include all terrain vehicles, basically. they want to, we have program open space. If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty long. I'm not going to elaborate what it is, but it's all the parks you see in the municipalities we have, and a lot of playground equipment and fields at the high schools, the middle schools, we got through program open space. There's a local share when it comes back. There's a procedure that how you spend that money. Going back probably 12 years ago, we started passing it because you had to spend 50% of that money to buy land, and you can spend up to 50% to develop that land or maintain what you add on it. For example, tennis courts or basketball courts, etc. Replace playground equipment. We changed that, like I said, about 12 years ago. We did like a 3-year thing at a time. Instead of you reach your acquisition goal, every county has a goal they have to reach an acquisition. When you reach your acquisition goal, you could do 75% of that money to develop it and or maintain it versus 50%. So they've requested, and the bill's already been drafted. Last time we did it was a 5-year sunset. And as time slipped by, we forgot 5 years went by, and we missed a year. So the bill's already drafted, and what the bill will do is just say, if you reach your acquisition goal locally, that you can use the money any way you want to use it in the program. So you can use it all to buy land, you can use it all to develop the land, or you could use it to what I call rehab or whatever, maintenance to upgrade or put new asphalt on a basketball court, for example, new baskets, etc. In the law right now, there's a stipulation that the county has to collect 8 cents per $100 on assessable value, or 0.08, I'm sorry, 0.08 on assessable real property in Garrett County, and 0.02 for per 100 for real property. One goes to the fire companies, one goes to rescue squad. What they want to do is take that out of the law because they reached agreement with this is mainly all for rescue squad, excuse me. What they want to do is take it all out and take this out of the law because they reached agreement with the rescue squad that they're going to fund whatever they need basically, so that they don't feel that this is needed in the law. And the final thing they're asking for is to be able, simplistically saying it, to be able to permit roads, county roads, and bond them, rather, bond them if we ever get to the point that they drill for natural gas on local roads, which would be county and or municipal roads. They would have to designate the road a whatever term we come up with the bill drafter, put on there gas development road or whatever, just like we do with the coal tax that we collect now. The roads are designated coal haul roads, and those are the only roads that money collected through the coal tax can be spent on. So this would be a similar scenario, but this would involve bonding versus paying taxes. You're going to bring up what you brought up yesterday. Well, I'll leave the liquor issues to our liquor experts here. Okay. And I'll apologize ahead of time if I get your name wrong. You can yell at me. And again, Wendell explained why Kim isn't here. Most of you, or a lot of you, know how to get a hold of her if you need anything. She sets up all our meetings and does a lot of correspondence for the whole District 1 delegation, which is the two of us and Delegate McKay and Delegate Buckle in Allegheny County. We're part of District 1. So we're going to start off and we'll go down the list as presented here. Bob Hoffman.
Yes. Yes, good evening. My name is Bob Hoffman. I think in this instance I'm representing myself, but I sit on the Policy and Review Board for the POA, and that's why I bring this issue forward. Good evening, Senator Edwards. Good evening, Delegate Beitzel. I came before you about this matter about 4 years ago. I think it was December 2012. And my bottom line request is the consideration be given to modifying the law that established the PRB to add a representative from the Maryland Department of the Environment to that body. And the reason for that is because when it comes to lake-related matters, the MDE does have a dog in the fight. They have responsibility for shoreline erosion. Clearly, they have responsibilities for the water appropriation permit for the lake, and they are not represented. And I believe that if they were, a lot of the matters that come up that might impact that agency, questions could be levied at that particular point in time to the public or to the board, whatever, and that the issues could be dealt more quickly than they would be right now. I coordinated this matter with both the chairman of the PRB, Greg Snook, he's in favor, and I also spoke with chairman of the county commissioners, Paul Edwards, and he's in favor of it as well. So I would ask that you consider this, making this change. And of course, if the change can be made, then what I would also request as part of that is that, of course, that would mean that the chairman of the PRB would advise the secretary of MDE about lake-related matters as they pertain to MDE, just as the chairman, in this case Greg Snook, has that responsibility for DNR. Any questions? That's really it.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Fred Pulse Jr.
Good evening.
Tap.
Yes, sir, I think.
I don't think it is. Tap on it. Now push the on switch.
There we go.
Ooh, now I'm live. My singing days.
Just leave it
All
on.
right, I'll leave it on.
Thanks.
Okay, my name is Fred Pulse Jr. I am representing ABATE of Maryland, the Mountain Chapter. I'm the legislative representative. I have John Savage and his wife Colette with me tonight. We are hoping that you all will do a great job like you did last year, helping support some initiatives that the only motorcycle rights organization in the state of Maryland is promoting. The primary one being the helmet modification bill, which would allow riders over the age of 21 who have completed a safety class and have insurance to choose to ride with or without a helmet anywhere in the state. We also hope that you will support the right-of-way bill, which was submitted last year, and I think there were some issues. I don't think it made it through the Senate. But what that would provide is if there's a vehicle involved in a motorcycle accident or any type of other vehicle other than a motorcycle, what it would allow is if there's serious injury or death, the wording's going to be changed to where they shall or will be required to appear rather than may appear. So we're hoping that both of you can do some work for us and advocate for both of those bills should they get submitted. We're hoping that they both do get drafted and submitted for legislation.
Okay, I think we supported those in the
Yes.
past. They don't come to either of our committees to begin with, but we talked to the people who won the committee.
I believe Delegate Eric Bromwell is going to submit the helmet modification bill this year.
Okay. Thanks.
And Fred, if you don't mind, would you put that request in a letter to us?
Sure.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Debbie, you and Dave, the tag team here.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell everybody who you are.
I'm David Moe, Chair of the Garrett County Liquor Control Board.
And Debbie Austin, I'm the administrator to the Liquor Control Board.
The Liquor Control Board is requesting legislation to allow Sunday sales at licensed premises to be able to begin at 10 a.m. on Sundays and close at midnight on Sundays. We have surveyed the various counties in the state of Maryland, and 10 a.m. seems to be the predominant one that they make it available. We would be in in, we would join in what they have. Also, there's been a West Virginia Sunday brunch bill, which this would be, that it allows individual counties to also referendum or make a choice on whatever Sunday hours they would like to have for their establishments. And it passed in Tucker County, West Virginia. It was not presented in Preston or Mineral County, West Virginia. Currently, Somerset County to our north begins authorized service at 9 a.m. And Allegheny County, I believe, is at 11 a.m. unless they request a change this year. So we'd like to be in compliance with the majority and those of our surrounding areas, except for the 2 districts that did not pass the referendums. And those election districts are Pleasant Valley and Kitzman. So we would not overturn any referendum results. We would be in compliance with all, and then we need some cleanup, ability to clean up the existing legislation, because the requirement for food service has been removed, I think, in 2005. No, that's what we're requesting, and I understand, Senator, that you all need a letter from the commissioners in approval of this, and the chair of the Garrett County Commission advised me this morning that the letter is in the mail. So,
Checks in the mail.
yeah, just like the checks in the mail.
Actually, it was 2015, not 2005.
Okay. Thank you.
And so the public knows, make sure right here, right now, it's at 1 o'clock.
Currently 1 o'clock.
Currently 1 o'clock.
Just a question on the cleanup amendments. Currently, Sunday sales option, you have a Sunday sales option fee of $250, and there's a separate provision that they have to pay that in order to have Sunday sales.
Last year, we introduced and requested the 6-day and 7-day fees, which took the daily average fee and divided it out because the 250 fee had been in place. Those new rates went into effect October 1, so it's a cleanup to take out the Sunday sales option because it's obsolete now that we have a 6-day license and a 7-day license.
So you will do away with the 6-day license unless, so if someone wants a 7-day license, they will just buy a 7-day license which includes Sunday.
Correct, instead of the
And there's
previously.
there still will be an extra fee for that Sunday
Yes,
license.
they all pay an extra fee for Sundays.
Will there be extra fee if you change the hours of operation, or that remain the same?
Yeah, that would remain the same.
Yeah, just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's all, thank you.
Thank you. Dave Inslee?
Good evening, sirs. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. My name is Dave Inslee. I'm a resident of Mountain Lake Park. I'm also a licensed insurance agent and property casualty, life and health, specialize in life and health. One of the things I was going to talk to you about is the Maryland Health Exchange and their lack of accountability. And if you have a problem with the insurance agent, you can file a complaint with the insurance commissioner or the Consumer Protection Agency under the Attorney General. But when it comes to the Maryland Health Exchange, there's not too many things you can do and they don't function. And they have several areas in which they don't seem to function. You've been very good. I have to thank you, Wendell, when I've called about the 1095 forms. 1095 forms prove that you've got a tax credit if you go through the Maryland Health Exchange to get your money back, or if you paid in it, paid too much, you'll get that refunded, or if you didn't claim it at all. But it's critical to get those 1095 forms out. By law, it's supposed to be out by January 31st. Maryland Health Exchange gave themselves extension in February, and they gave themselves an extension in March. I had clients to get them until June. In the meantime, they had to file their taxes. The IRS sends a letter saying, you claim this tax credit, you won't get it if we can't prove this, because the Maryland Health Exchange, again, never sent their copy to the IRS, even though the client's received it. So it requires documentation time. It's just very frustrating to have clients call me and say, what do they do? I've called Wendell sometimes, but I mean, June 3rd, if you're a private business and you don't send out your W-2s, it's a $500 fine per person, I understand. Might be wrong, but you know, for this Maryland state government to give themselves extension, and even miss those to the detriment of the citizens is just, there's just no way you can get around to get these people to function. So I don't know if, other than the insurance commission, which, you know, talking to the government, complaining about another department of the government doesn't seem to go too well, has there been any discussion about having an oversight committee to see what these people do or don't do? Because I could go on, I won't waste people's time with the problems. So right now, today, on the Maryland Health Exchange website, you get on there, they claim there's 4 insurance companies: Kaiser Permanente, Cigna, Evergreen, and Care First. Kaiser Permanente is only selling in one county, that's Montgomery. It's probably the only people that can afford it. Cigna has a very weak network up here. Care First has a good network up here, but Evergreen, even though it's advertised on the Maryland Health Exchange website, you click on it to buy a policy and it says policies aren't available now. So they're advertising 4 companies. You're really down to 1, Care First, because Cigna's network up here is weak. And it just goes on and on. You call up and ask why this is. There's incorrect information on the website. And again, you know, all I can do is call and complain to you all. You've been very helpful when I've had problems with clients to help get it straightened out, but there's problems that exist that are ongoing from last year. So I don't know if there's ever been any discussion to have an oversight committee look into the fact that they just don't function. There's no accountability. And who do you complain to other than bend your ear? And you've been very gracious when I've called up to help clients, but I have some clients I called you about Wendell, and it's still ongoing. I mean, it's December. So that's what I was asking, if there's a particular branch of the government you could actually contact to file a formal complaint against these people. Because it really hurts a lot of people. We give out the navigators, there's some really good ones out there, but others don't know what they're doing, and they have the people claim too much for credit, and then at the end of the year they get punished, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars back because they simply didn't know what they were doing. Now, if I do that to a client, I'm authorized on the exchange as an authorized broker to assist people. It's free, no cost. There's only 2 in this county. There's 1 in Allegheny. If I do something wrong, they can file a complaint against me. I can be fined, I could have my license suspended or revoked, penalized. I have to carry errors of omission insurance. But when you're dealing with this entity known as the Maryland Health Exchange, there's no accountability. There's nothing you can do. So I don't know if there's ever been any discussion about looking into an oversight committee and cleaning them up, getting them to function.
I haven't heard any specific request to create an oversight committee. That's something that the governor, I think, would have to initiate. But in the House and in the Senate, we have committees that review these agencies, and there's been numerous hearings and presentations on the Maryland Health Insurance Exchange. And as you know, when it was initially set up, they had a contractor that set it up, and we spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting a system that completely failed and had to cancel all that and start a new system. It is, you know, I have people call me, and you've called, and other people have called expressing concerns about not only the availability and being able to get through the system, but the cost. And I just, more recently this year, maybe you could enlighten us a little bit about your experience with the way the costs have increased this year in Maryland, and you've indicated that Blue Cross and Blue Shield basically is the only one that's still providing coverage here in Maryland, and that's what we've been basically informed also here, especially for this region of the state. But I'm hearing people say that just the increase in cost that they're experiencing is putting it beyond their means, and obviously those people that receive that qualify for assistance with their insurance aren't feel nearly as bad, and I understand that maybe up to 75% of people that have insurance through the Maryland Health Insurance Exchange or more receive subsidies, but the ones that don't receive subsidies are the ones that are really getting clobbered. And I talked to one lady that her rates went from like 600 to 800, and the co-pays went from, I thought she said around 3,000 or somewhere in that range, to 6,000 some dollars. She said she didn't know how she was going to do it. So I think we're going to see some change. Obviously, I don't know with the election and with the new president, there's an indication that Maryland Health Insurance Exchange was created from Obamacare, or as a result of the Obamacare initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an insurance guy, and you understand it way more than I do. What's your experience with the increases that are taking place just this year in Maryland and with your clients?
In general, the bronze and silver plans are going up 60–70%, and some of the deductibles are increasing as much as 50%. So I have a couple, their annual premium is $12,000, it's going to $21,600. Bad at math, somebody can figure that out. The deductible went from $9,000 up to $13,100. So they don't qualify for a subsidy, so this is like $10,000 less an expendable income they'll have. I know there's nothing you can do about the ACA, but my main complaint, the reason why I'm here, is that there's just no accountability with that organization. It's one that's hard to get through to them. And the website doesn't really function. If it's just a straight application, one person, you can get through it, it'll probably work. But the problem is you have a family, and you have a child that loses their chip coverage. Then they have to hop on in the middle of the year, or somebody drops off. You just can't do it on that website. It doesn't work. They say you have to call in, we'll do it back room office or whatever, because they have to get some computer guru to go in there and fix it. So the website isn't still totally functional. It just has a lot of issues. I could go on about that. But when you have a problem like the 1095 forms, and these people are now being harassed by the IRS because the state of Maryland's Maryland Health Connection isn't functional. And it's just inexcusable that it took them 6 months to get these forms in. And it's just, except for calling you, and I gotta thank you both, because every time I called, you've been very helpful. But it's just ongoing. I won't waste any more time. It's just, they're putting together a panel, put my name in there, I'll be happy to come down and donate my time. But that's all I have to say.
Well, we appreciate your interest. I've not heard of anything either, other than, the governor's committed to trying to make it easier to get through the bureaucratic maze. I'd use some other word. Bureaucratic maze, not only what you're talking about, but a lot of other departments in the state that have rules and regulations. This is no excuse, but I think there's a new person heading this up that was just appointed 6 months ago or somewhere in there. Now that's no excuse for what you're talking about.
Yeah,
and there will be, I would be willing to bet there's going to be probably maybe a change at federal level on insurance, and then we're going to have to see how we're going to handle that. But Maryland got off kind of wrong foot when he hired people. Wendell mentioned we spent $100+ million, and then they left, so we had to get someone else to take care of it. So,
just one other question: is it true the woman that headed up that department that was putting together the software is still working for the state of Maryland?
she went. I forget. She went. Where'd she go?
Well,
She's somewhere in the state, but I forget where it is.
Yeah, after they told her the parts were incompatible, I heard she went on vacation to Cancun for 2 weeks and came back and resigned.
She isn't there, but I think she's somewhere in the state hierarchy somewhere.
There you go. There you go. Well, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jess Whittemore.
Senator Delegate, yes, thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Pull that over in front of me a little bit. You can raise it up.
There you go.
You
As you probably know, this is about fracking. I have a couple statements leading into questions. Whether the answer to the questions or consider a debate, that's fine. I'm going to ask them anyway. Let's see, Senator, many citizens have shared concern about you advocating to your colleagues in the Senate that there are only a handful of people against fracking in Western Maryland. And your response to many of us is that you have not talked with any of your fellow legislators about fracking since the legislative session ending in April. What about the time prior to this past April, from then until years ago?
Well, let me just say, you sent me some correspondence, I responded to your correspondence. I don't know who you're talking about. I'd like to know who these legislators are that are telling you this bunch of stuff, which you haven't answered yet. I'm waiting to hear from you who my colleagues are that are telling you that I'm down there saying this or that or so forth. I say the same thing down there that I say here. My position's the same as it's been for the last 6 or 7 years. I tell them the same thing down there as I say here. You've been to all these meetings. We had 3.5 years worth of the commission. You probably were 90% of them or more. You heard all the comments there. So again, I would ask you, who are these people, my colleagues in the legislature, telling you that I'm saying what you just said? The only person I talked to since the legislature finished in April was Senator Zirkin, who came up here to meet with you and others.
Yeah, but as you know, this is prior to April. Prior to April.
I'm just telling you, I say the same
over
thing.
the last several years.
I'm saying the same thing.
Okay, that doesn't really answer much.
Well,
That's okay. No, that's what you want to say, that's fine.
okay.
Okay, Senator, Western Maryland's top educational and most qualified citizens have gracefully submitted near thesis detailed reports for years to you, our delegation, pointing out peer-reviewed science facts that condemn fracking as unsafe in so many ways. NDE tells us, in short, through their recent released regulations, that fracking cannot be regulated safely in certain watersheds in Garrett County, yet implies it can be conducted safe in others. Senator, you yourself said in April 2015 in an email to me, it can be conducted safe. Let's see. Okay, wait a minute, my vision's getting a little poor here. Senator, you yourself in April 2015 in an email to me that there is no 100% guarantee against fracking related problems. And now we know that the ratio of 2-to-1 citizens are for a ban on fracking here in Garrett County and statewide. Yet you continue to advocate for fracking. Will you please let us know why, in light of these facts?
The only thing I'm going to say is there's all kinds of studies out there, and I've said this before, and I've said it to you, and I think it's in my correspondence to you. There's all kinds of studies out there. Some favor what you're talking about. Some are the complete opposite of what you're talking about. So you can almost pick 1-to-1 and quote unquote experts. I'm not an expert. And yes, I have said, can you guarantee it? But I'll sit here and tell you, you can't guarantee 100% anything that you do or whatever. You can't guarantee that you won't go out there and get in your car and your brakes won't work. That's a little odd example, but you know, to guarantee 100%, you can't do it. You do the best you can with the technology you have, but the best rules and regulations in place. And oh, by the way, former Governor O'Malley said this was the gold standard he put together. And I will tell you, there's some people that support your position and have said these regulations proposed by this governor are stricter than those. So it will be, whatever term you want to put on it, the gold standard for the country. There'd be the strictest rules and regulations in the country if they're adopted, which I think ALR meets the 20th, I believe it is. and they'll decide one way or the other whether they support them or don't support them, and then there's a process one way or the other there. So, I have always said that I would work to get the strictest regulations we can in place for this function. And just as I've said before, and you can agree or disagree, we have the strictest mining laws in the country. Adopted in the 1980s, people still mine. They win national awards for it. Existing mining under the new regulations are cleaning up the old mining to the tune this point of about $1 billion. There's about another $1 billion worth to do out there at no cost to the taxpayer. So the remining's reclaiming that. We've been drilling in this county since the 50s, I believe.
It's a different process.
Well, it is to a point. It still comes back up a hole, which is one of the concerns. And you have older equipment then.
Very different process.
Well, it's a different process, but it's still, you have to drill a hole. And that gas has a potential to come out of there, just like you're talking about if you go horizontal, about gas coming and leaking back up through some of these wells. So, I've looked at the proposed regs. I think they're very strict regs. You won't agree because the only thing you want to do is ban it. So, you don't look at it from
Yes,
trying to
as a matter of
compromise
fact,
anything.
Friendsville has banned it, and for a very good reason. We are exponentially at greater risk than anybody else in the entire county. A lot of the county drains into our source of water. And with the admitted risks, though you might say they're low, when you add up hundreds of those little risks, Friendsville is receiving a lot of risk. And I have a perfectly good reason for standing here and making those statements.
Let me ask you a question. And I've asked you this before, and you never really answered it, and said it's a federal issue and that.
Yeah.
Part of the Yawk River corridor is in West Virginia. Have you ever written the state of West Virginia and asked them to ban drilling in the Yawk corridor in West Virginia?
Well, number one, you don't just call West
I
Virginia
didn't say call them, I said write them a letter.
or write them.
Why not?
Okay?
That's what you're doing in
This is
Maryland.
what you do, because it is a federal law. They're federally able
Okay.
to do what they're
Just
doing.
answer the
And
question.
the answer will be, and you know what, maybe I will write a letter to West Virginia and get the answer that I thoroughly expect, that they're gonna do what they want, okay? Now,
that's fine,
but I do give donations to, let's see, Earth Justice, who is fighting those loopholes big enough to drive my Prius through. And we're going to try to work and whittle away at making restrictions on oil companies harder and harder and harder. That's what I'm doing about West Virginia, to try to help my community.
That's good, but you ought to write.
That's a good answer, by the way.
Well, I'm not sure it doesn't answer the question, because the answer is no. That's the answer. You didn't write to West Virginia.
I'm doing better than that.
I'm not going to debate you anymore.
Well, I still have one
but
last
I did
question.
write to the state of Maryland and send some requests into the MDE to change some of the proposed regs before they took them to ALR. Did you do that?
We did. We got no answer over. We got no answer from them about testing of the water and having an adequate, baseline water testing and continued water testing that can actually detect fracking. They did not answer us. They also didn't answer us about the 2,000-foot setback that does not apply to our town. Our source of water is almost 2/3 of the entire county of Garrett County, and you can't put a 2,000-foot setback on our source of water, so it doesn't apply. We're in a fix, more than most, and we're not getting any answers. Would you consider softening your position, going down to Annapolis, and telling people that there's a ton of people up here that are against fracking, that want a ban? I mean, would you do that? Would you soften your position just a little bit? Represent your people. There's a, as you know, there's a poll out that shows that 2 to 1, the ratio of 2 to 1, are for a ban. That's your constituency. That's not just in Garrett County, that's the entire state of Maryland. Would you consider softening your position in view of what your constituency wants?
My position's the same as it's been. I have, over the years, being on this commission, had some different thought processes on some things. But again, I'm asking you what colleagues of mine are telling you what?
Well, they're probably the same ones that are gonna be telling me what you're doing this time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Why would I wanna tell you that? I can tell you Miller's office and also
Who?
Miller's office.
Miller's office.
Yeah, I won't tell you who there, but in Miller's office and in, others.
Okay.
I just want to, if you don't mind, just jump in here a little bit because,
Well, to be
not
respectful to you, Wendell, the House of Delegates is for a ban on fracking. I'm not so sure what you have to say means much.
I just want to address one of the things, I was at a local business and a senator came to Garrett County to address a group of folks that I guess requested.
At our request.
And I had the same situation occur when one of my delegate colleagues some number of years ago came out and met with a group of folks. And it would seem to me, I wouldn't do this to any of my colleagues, and I don't think George would do it to any of his colleagues. If I would travel to another colleague's district to meet with any of the folks in his district or her district, I would have the courtesy to call them and tell them that I've been requested to come to your district and to meet with people in constituents in that district and advise that colleague of the request. And I would inform those folks that, you're welcome to meet with me, but you can come down to my district and meet with me. And if you need to take these things up, you ought to take them up with your representative in your district. And I understand you don't like our positions on this, but I just think it's very disrespectful for colleagues to travel out. In fact, when I talked to that
I would like to answer that.
Let me conclude that. When I seen that senator, and I obviously know I'm Senator Zirkin, and I said, Senator Zirkin, welcome to Garrett County. And obviously, I treat him with a great deal of respect, and said it's really nice that you came out here. And I said, by the way, Senator Edwards knows that you're out here in his district. And he said, well, I called him on the way up to tell him that I was coming up. And I then called George and told him that Senator Zirkin was out here. And he said, yeah, he left a message on my phone a while ago, and I tried to call back, but he didn't answer. But I just want to say that in the way I would do things, that I wouldn't do that to my colleagues.
I understand that, but I will say that Friendsville's desperate. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. I hate to put it this way, but it's getting to this point. You guys are talking about poisoning our only water source. That's desperate.
Well, if you talk about poisoning and desperate, it wasn't very long ago that there are 2 towns that sewage treatment plants discharge into the Occoquan River and come down to water.
Oh, I know you helped us with that.
And
I want to give you guys tons of credit for everything you've done for us in the past and everything you're going to do for us in the future. But I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about fracking, okay? And we're talking about surviving what you guys want to do to us. Now, I got one last thing, and I just wanted to know what it's all about. Senator, can you give me a short description and purpose of the pilot bill?
Certainly. Right now, there's an existing law. It's a pilot bill. Already in existence, was created in 1920s, was amended in the 30s, was amended in the 70s, was amended in the 90s. And I've been trying to amend it the last 2 years. The state owns a lot of land out here. A lot of land in the whole state. But most of it's Garrett, Allegheny, and 3 counties on the lower eastern shore. Right now, the law says that if this is for state forests and parkland only. that if the state owns 10% or more land in the county, that county gets 25% of the revenue generated on that property, whether timber sales or concessions or whatever. They own less than 10%, they get 15% of the revenue. We've had to battle that for the last 10 years, well, 8 prior to the last 2 under Governor Hogan when it was reinstituted, where they wanted, our colleagues wanted to take all that money from us. I can remember back probably in the 70s, we used to get about $1.5 million out of that. When we finally got it all back in 2 years ago, I guess, prior to that, the last check the county got was for $97,000. They keep buying land out here. Every acre they buy comes off the tax rolls. So I've been trying to come up with something that I think is a lot fairer than what's in existence now, just a different way of paying what's already in the law, a pilot program. And there's several ways you can do it, but the latest one was we would break it down into 10,000 acre increments. We break it down into 10, I'm sorry, I'm grabbing you too.
You know, I got the gist. We don't have to go real detailed about it.
$250,000 per increment with a cost of living increment every 3 years so it doesn't get stagnant. That would give Garrett County about $2.5 million, which is a tremendous amount of money. And another way I did it, I took one of the latest purchases I saw where they spent $2,500 an acre and said they own this many acres in Garrett County. So if you took this many acres times that and said that was the assessed value, because that's basically what it is, what you paid for it, and multiplied it out by the tax rate, about $2.5 million. So that's what the pilot is and what we're trying to do. So we passed the Senate the last 2 years, but didn't go anywhere in the House. We're going to keep working on it. Hopefully we get something passed, because right now it's very unfair. And these are the poorest parts of the state where they own all this land.
Okay.
And look what Garrett County can do with $2.5 million.
I got that. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming here.
Thank you. Howard Reynolds.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for coming this evening. My comment concerns the interest on overdue obligations to the state, which last session was still set at 13%. And there were 2 bills introduced into the legislature, one by the House, and I think Mr. Beitzel introduced this one, and one by the Senate, to lower the interest rate down to what's determined by the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, the average interest rate on state obligations in the country is around 4%. However, when these bills got into the Senate, they got gutted. And instead of lowering it down to what would normally be a reasonable interest rate, they are now just going to be slowly reduced to, I believe, 11% over 6 years. I'd like to know why Maryland has such a high interest rate on overdue obligations, and why these bills got gutted and kept this interest rate really excessive.
It really boils down to one thing. It's the amount of money that's being generated from the charges on those past due accounts. And so it comes down to what's called a fiscal note. And that's if they would be lowered at one sweep down from, say, 13 to 4%, there is a fiscal note that says that will cost the state this much money. And so when you're looking at the budget, and the budget committees looking at these things, they look very closely at fiscal notes, and if you knock out, let's say in round numbers, this would cost $500,000, then you usually have to find $500,000 somewhere else to make it up. So that's why they put it in increments to reduce it to a certain amount. But I don't know why the Senate only went down to 11%. And when the legislation was put in the House, I don't remember what the lower rate was, but it was to lower it from one time down to the amount that somewhere near where you suggested. So the Senate was obviously looking at the fiscal note, and so they say if we're going to lose this much money, how are we going to make it up?
Well, why should the interest rate have anything to do with the budget? It should just be to recoup money that would be lost by this money not being paid to the state. It seems like you're using this money that's gotten from the interest as part of the budget, and it really shouldn't be.
Well, it all goes, you know, those kind of things all go into the general fund, and it goes into the operating budget. So that along with taxes and sales tax and everything else that goes into the pool of money that comes into the general fund, this is included in that. And so when they do revenue estimates when the budget's prepared, they do an estimate of what the revenues are going to be, and this is a portion of that revenue. And so if you change the law that impacts that amount that's coming in, then that much, especially if you reduce it, then you have that shortfall. And so if you make the shortfall, if you cut the budget on the revenue side, then you have to do something on the operating expenditure side to make it balance.
Well, I see this, but again, interest rate should not have to do with that.
I completely agree with you.
And let me just say, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I made an error in my taxes due to what I considered was poorly written instructions. 3 years later, I get a bill from Mr. Francho's office asking me to pay this with 3 years worth of 13% interest. So that's why I'm bringing this up. Not just the fact that the 13% interest is what I consider usury. The fact that your Francho's office and the comptroller is sitting on their hands for 3 years before they let anybody know they made an error in their taxes, and then charging you multiple compound interest rates. This is something else you could mention to Francho. Okay, I see what you're doing, and that's what I expected, that the interest was part of the budget instead of a separate thing just to make up the fact that you're losing a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, just like a bank charges interest rates on loans. The state obviously isn't doing that. Thank you.
I would just add, and talk about the Senate, I think we originally were gonna go to 10% right away, but as Delegate Beitzel said, it is part of the budget. When you're looking at the totality of the budget, you look where all the income comes from. And I would tell you, there are legislators that would just as soon leave it at 13% and increase your taxes overall to generate more money for the state of Maryland. But the chairman of the committee in budget tax, which I serve on, which dealt with that issue, he wanted it down to what you're talking about.
Well, that's what it should be.
But because of the pressures about the overall budget, that's why I didn't get to what they looked at on the other side. And the two houses have to agree on all this stuff.
Okay, I guess the last question is, why are other states only charging an average of 4%?
You'd have to ask those other states. Again, I think if we didn't, here's something else you need to keep in mind when we talk about the budget. We're now back in a deficit situation. We're looking at $700 million deficit, $300 million this year, $400 million next year, and going to $1.2 billion, 2022, I think it is, if we don't do something, 2020. But we've been in that situation before. We'll work it out. But that's, they just wrote that down about a month ago because the revenues aren't coming in on what we're projected. So.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Draper.
Hello, my name is Steve Draper. I'd like to thank you for coming out on this night. I'm here to express my opposition to fracking. I think there should be a ban. Fracking is an extractive industry. The history of extractive industries worldwide is not a good one for the people that have to host it. A lot of people might make, or some people might make some money on the fracking, but generally speaking, the local economy does not make the money. You can look north into Pennsylvania and look and see all the Cadillacs that aren't there. You can look west into West Virginia and see the same thing. The local economies do not get help by fracking. And we've been cleaning up after the coal industry for probably the better part of a century, and we're still doing it. And as you expressed earlier tonight, it's billions of dollars. I think that will happen here with fracking. Fracking has been banned by the state of New York for the health reasons. And yet in Maryland, they say it's not going to happen. I don't believe that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Don and Nancy Page.
Scratch my name.
Scratch your name? No. Okay. No mark present.
Okay.
Eric Robinson.
Just a little. Well, as usual, thank you guys for coming out. I know it's not, for you it's a little more of a drive than it is for Wendell, but, and giving the opportunity to hear from the public. Tonight, I have two questions that are going to be specific, and I'll be doing that as a representative of Engage Mountain, Maryland. I'm their legislative chair. One of the things that we worked on here in the county, and Senator Edwards, I believe you were aware of, we had some issues with the water well due to state road salts. It took just over 11 months to finally get that resolved, and she now does have clean and drinkable water at home. One of the problems that we saw was that the change that they made with the process of being able to file a complaint and to get that process started is now you have to go to the treasurer, to Nancy Cope's office, to be able to start that process. You used to be able to go to state highways and begin it. The bureaucracy that they've put in place now has made it much harder for citizens that are trying to resolve issues that are with county residents and the state, and getting that cross-border. I worked with Kevin Null and the commissioners in trying to get this going. We worked with the health department, and the process was, of course, we had a person that was a little, she kind of got in her own way a little bit, but the process that we found going through this was really difficult. And it looks like, and I spoke with Kevin Null last night, that we would really benefit for having a ombudsman or some type of program that was here, that when we have those types of situations where there's a state agency and a county resident that is trying to go through these processes to help them, or at least have a point of contact to make it a single person. They end up having to, go to the health department, go, talk to Steve Sherrard, talk to Rodney, then go back to the commissioners, then call the state, and by the time it all gets back around, it's very, very confusing for them. And some people, well, we had the one lady that lives right next door. She just went ahead because at her age, she doesn't have a well now. Hers is also gone. She just moved up to Somerset with family. It was just, again, I think that we would really benefit from having something there to give people a point of reference. One is just to be able to have the forms readily available they have to fill out now with the Treasury Department. And I think that would be a good step to having that there and a point of contact for people to say, if you've got a problem with state roads or if you have a problem with this, here's where you need to go and begin that process. And I think that you guys would be able to influence that and possibly make that a smoother transition for folks that are encountering that problem. The second issue is the introduction of what the commissioners asked for last night on road bonding, and it was a question whether they would actually be able to do bonding. we've done some, I was on the Shell Gas Advisory Committee several years ago, and I did a whole paper on transportation. One of the things that came out of that was that Caroline County has already have authority, and they actually got absolute authority. And I think that if we went back and looked at that legislation and what they put through, it might be as simple as adding to that Caroline and Garrett County, because it gave that commission county the same authority to be able to manage roads, and this, they could do it at whatever pace they thought was necessary, as opposed to trying to say, well, we're gonna affect legacy industries, we're gonna affect this. But they also got the authority to be able to do bonding. But I think that it'd probably be an easier step than trying to recreate that wheel. The last one, I'm not speaking on behalf of Engage, I'm speaking on myself. We're talking about the deficits that we're having with the state and the financial problems that are going forward. And in association with fracking, it was seen that the state right now has no dog in this hunt. They don't gain anything other than if a person leases their property, that they pay a personal income tax on that property leased amount, which is very, very small compared to what it could be associated with other processes. We've talked about a severance tax in the past. If this looks like it's going to be moving forward, why wouldn't we be doing something to that?
Got something else?
Nope. I won't be able to let you.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to see if you were done, because I want to back up to your other thing here.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, salt's a big problem in this county. The state of Maryland's spending millions of dollars to correct the salt issues in this county. Delegate Beitzel and I met this past session with the treasurer's staff and people that handle this. Because of the timing and, you know, we yelled at them, and I consider and tell you, I believe they're trying to get out of this the cheapest way they can, what it amounts to. They won't admit that, but based on what I've seen over the years, I think that's the case. But we did get them to agree to hire an outside third party to evaluate their decision and or the local decision to jump in the middle here. And hopefully that's working a little bit. We continually try to look at how we can make it better for the constituent who's having a problem. I mean, we've dealt with people that's, you know, it's corroded all their equipment in their houses. They've had to replace all that, the wells. We've got these, what do you call, reverse osmosis stuff now, which is what they're really
That's what they're pushing very, very hard.
But I don't know if a person signed that, because that's good for 10 years, and after that, it's your bailiwick to take care
Right.
of.
And there is an expense with our filter systems that are associated with those.
Right. So it is a major, major issue, and but we are aware of it, and we try to work with the treasurer's office. I just sent them one in relation to one neighbor you just mentioned again, because she got retested by the health department in Colligan, I think, and her salt came back well above the rate they go by, so we
Yeah, the
shipped that
EPA
over
standard
with
is
some.
250, and the one well was
This was
800.
over 300 some now, and this neighbor, the one she got, sent kind of a little nasty note to the treasurer's office and said, you got, you know, relook at this, which they have said they will, so I'm hoping we're gonna work something out there. That's my comments on salt. Wendell might have something to say there, but, we're gonna do whatever we can in working with the county on bonding the roads, because we're talking about county roads, so we need to work with them on how they wanna structure this. If you can do it the way you're talking about, fine. If not, then we'll get the wording to take care of it, the simplest
That is
way
our
we
largest
can,
asset, is our county roads.
to take care of that. And as far as, tax on the gas, as you know, I've been the pusher of that. I don't think a colleague supported what I've tried to do, but I've said, you know, there ought to be a state tax, put bills in to do that. Last year I said that with it. They don't wanna pass anything, so, you know, and that's because we don't want fracking, didn't wanna pass it, for whatever reason. And I think we ought to pass it, have it on the books anyway, if they ever get to the point to frack. So, you know, I do support that. I think that's the easiest way on national resources that you extract. The best way to gain the value of it is when you take it out of the ground. And you know how much is there, how much it's worth, and you put the tax on at that point. So I don't have a problem with that. But until we get to the point they're gonna do something, I'm not gonna waste my time, your time, or anybody else's time putting a bill in that you know is not gonna go anywhere. Because as you know, you couldn't agree on it. Because the county does have a tax, for those of you who don't know. Both counties have a local tax. Garrett County's is 5, Allegheny is 7, Garrett's is actually 5.5, which 0.5% would go to the municipalities based on the percentage of population. So when you look at a severance tax, you have to look at what's already there and what you put on and what surrounding states, or at least this is my opinion, charge. When Pennsylvania does nothing, West Virginia, I think, has 5% or 5 cents or 5%. Where they were looking at it, I think they did.
Derek is that in there?
Ohio, they have something like a 3% or something there, or they did. I think they were looking at making that more, whether they have or not, I don't know. So, I think that's kind of one thing we agree on, other than maybe what amount you tack on there, because I believe you have to add the two together.
Well, I mean, right now, with you looking at the deficits that you have, and looking at MDE and the problems that they've had with their compliance division, having a severance tax there that would be able to at least fund some of that. You know, because you can have all the regulations in the world, if you don't have any enforcement, they're no good.
Some of that will be in the permit cost. They'll write some of that into the permit. At least that's what we've been told. Issue a permit, you have to pay to get the permit, and I'll have some of those costs written into the permit when the person applies for the permit. So, but to answer your question on the tax on natural gas, I'm depending on the amount, I'm a supporter of taxes,
Wendell, like said, zero.
extractions of natural resources.
Just a little bit on the salt issue. It seems like when we think we're making progress, we take 2 steps backwards. I just got a call today, and Mr. Reynolds mentioned the 13% on penalty. Had this individual that has salt contamination. It's been proven. The state's highway administration acknowledges it, and they went through the whole thing. But for some reason, they told him he should go ahead and get it fixed, and they didn't reimburse him. So
He got that in writing, did he?
He went ahead and took care of the problem, and he's got it fixed, and apparently the testing and everything is okay, but he's requested reimbursement. And I thought it was squared away because I dealt with it like 6 months or so ago, but he called today and said he put it on his credit card, he's paying 18% interest, and he can't get reimbursed, and they sent him a form to sign, and it was a release of liability, and basically it wanted him to sign a thing that if the state came along at a later date and dumped a truckload of salt down his well, that they wouldn't be responsible for it, the way the form read. And he said, I looked at it and I wouldn't sign it, but I advised him to get an attorney to look at it, and he looked at, he took it to his attorney and said, I'm probably gonna cost you more than what you would get reimbursed. I advised him to call Senator Edwards and Delegate Beitzel.
There's a vicious circle there, isn't there?
Yeah. So anyway, I just got it today, and so we're working on that again, but, if industry would do to people what the state is doing to people with this salt issue, it would be a whole different ballgame. And I know I've dealt in the past with Matiki, and when they were mining and took people's water, they were right there on the spot taking care of the problem. If they weren't, there was someone at the state right there on the spot to make them take care of it.
Well, they have a bully pulpit though to be able to do that.
So we would expect the same thing from the state, which doesn't occur. So as the Senator said, this is something that we've got to work a little hard on to make sure we get squared away.
I'd only make one other comment about the water issue and the salt. When this all began, this was 11 months worth. Initially, I guess they had a program that was set up that if it was determined that the state had any culpability in this, they immediately began delivering water to them, something that they could use until this system was installed or something else was done. Apparently, my understanding is that that has been removed. And I think that we should have have something in place, because we have nothing at the county level to be able to bring in. The health department doesn't have anything. You know, I volunteered, I have a buffalo, and I volunteered to have the water brought out there, or I mean, the buffalo to be brought out if the county or somebody would supply water, but it seems like we need to have an interim process for them to at least be able to, you know, have something potable there.
That's the first I've heard that, because they've always said, and they've always done, that I'm aware of, the ones I've worked with, that once it's been determined the state has caused a big problem, they do provide at least drinking water, either through, and they deliver it, and sometimes it's through bottles and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it's the buffalo or whatever, for other, depending on what they can't use that water for. So this is the first time I've heard that.
Well, maybe, is there anything at the state level that we can receive, that we have that information available where, I mean, they've stated that if we find that we are responsible, this is our actions that we will take, so that we would be able to pass that on. Again, like I said, I don't, with this one circumstance and this one individual, I know we had some real headbutting that was going on.
We're working on one that's been a couple years, they still don't have it worked out on over 40, so, you know, and that's been.
Because it'd be great to have something in writing that we'd be able to share with folks when they end up encountering them.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Jim Guy.
I made a little mistake coming over here and drank a cup of coffee, and I need to make a head call. Is there somebody behind me that I could follow?
Yes, sir, we'll let you go there. And then get back up to that, the line, you come back. Mark Stutson.
So gentlemen, thank you very much for coming out. I'm Mark Sussman, I'm president of Engaged Out in Maryland. And I'm sure, well, you may have been following the Washington Post recently, posted an article about fracking. And I think it was Senator Zirkin that was saying that, there's going to be likely a ban bill introduced this year. And he wasn't terribly optimistic about the ban, thinking that it may end up being a moratorium bill. And my question to both of you is that locally, we've been, Engaged Out Maryland has been pushing very hard that the commissioners do an economic study before the fracking would begin. And it's been taking way too long. We're not going to have any results from the study until long after you guys are debating the issue in the General Assembly. So I guess what I'm asking is, if a bill were to come forward, I think it would be irresponsible for Garrett County to move on that bill or move forward with fracking without any sort of true economic study, whether it be done locally or by the state. Because the local study was being focused on the tourism economy, second home markets, recreation, the things that are driving our economy now, my concern is that those industries could be displaced by industry. As you know, there's the heavy industrial traffic that could scare away tourism. People could get a bad taste in their mouths, come here one weekend for the first time, that's the thing they run into, turns them away, they tell their friends, any sort of negative press that might come out. When we've had sewage spills into the lake, they go up in the Baltimore Post. I know one of those reports resulted in a lot of cancellations the weekend that happened. It would have, people would have thought there was, the whole lake was contaminated, even though it was fairly isolated. But that kind of negative press can really steer people away from the county. So I guess all I'm asking is that if you would at least consider that, whatever legislation comes forward, that without proper study on how it would affect our local economy, it would be worth the delay, at least to have time to consider the full ramifications should any fracking activity begin.
It's my understanding the county's still trying to move forward on a study, and I think they're waiting to hear back from one of the departments, reference to some money to help fund it.
Right.
I thought they said the other day they were close to hearing from them, but you'd have to ask them, I don't know. Reading articles of people sending me from the Washington Post here lately at, who knows how many bills are gonna be put in to do what. It seems like certain people are irritating other people, so I don't know what, what's gonna be put in, what the outcome's gonna be. And I just, from my standpoint, keep an open mind, first of all, see what's put in, what it does or doesn't do.
Do you feel there would be a relevance in having a study done before drilling begins?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. First of all, again, this is my personal, the gold rush is over. There's not gonna be a bunch of people rushing in here to drill wells if they can drill, number one. And I think the state even can control that through the regulatory process. Even to probably slow it down a little bit more. But there's been asked to do other kinds of studies also, so, we do, once that's done, then is it gonna be, well, we need to do another study on something else? When the commission was put in place, it had a charge of what to do, they did it. Certain people kept saying, well, you didn't look at it thoroughly enough, or you should have did this, or you should look at this, or you should look at that. I think the county, when did they bring up about going to study? Been a year ago, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, a year ago.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, they are trying to get the money, I'm not gonna cut any slack for the county, but the county's hard pressed for money right now to do a lot of anything extra. And I think you all know that and follow, what's going on there, but, I will tell you that when bills come in, I'll look out and keep an open mind. I've been talking to a bunch of you, and I'm talking to some more tomorrow on this issue, so if nothing else to say, here's where I'm at, here's where you're at. And I think that you need to have an open discussion. I've talked to anybody that wants to talk. And as I said, I did write to the department and requested some changes in the reg before they presented them, and it's my understanding they did do them, which made them a little stricter, which some people don't like, but I think it's helpful to the process. So that's my commentary on that. Got commentary on that?
Well, obviously, this is a controversial issue, to say the least. I think this issue has divided the county more than any issue that I've dealt with in my professional career in Garrett County. I think there's really, I'm not going to go into depth in why I take the position I do, but I've looked at this issue probably as much. Oh, let me speak a little louder so you can hear back here. Okay.
My problem, not yours.
Okay, that's all right. I wanted to make sure you can hear. I do have some experience in dealing with water wells and water and groundwater and air pollution and all those things. And so, but I kind of have two key factors, I guess, that I kind of base my decisions on this issue. And number one being property rights. People own their property, and owning property has been vitally important for this country, and it was one of the things that the founders wanted to make sure that people had their property, that they were secure in their property, and I think if we go with a total ban, we're going to be dealing with some issues where people felt that their property's been unfairly taken without due process in violation of the Fourth Amendment. The other issue is, I think if everyone did what New York and Pennsylvania is doing now, we would still be paying a tremendous price for gasoline, fuel oil, and natural gas. If every state did what these two states that you refer to, New York, and doing, and requesting more studies and continuing studies, and I think the studies, there are lots of studies out there. And I went to University of West Virginia, and it was arranged to take the Environment Transportation Committee over there, and they elected not to go, but I think their time would have been well spent if they went over. They drilled well right in Morgantown conjunction under the review and working with the University of West Virginia Geology Department, health issues, economic issues, and everything else, and they're supplying the town of Morgantown's buying the gas from that well that's there. So, you know, if we would do what New York, I mean, if every state would do what New York and Maryland has been doing with this, we would be spending $500 billion or more to foreign countries to buy energy, and we would be paying dearly for it. And I think our economy would be suffering to the point that it would have a much, much greater impact on tourism than what the fear of what natural gas would do drilling here in Garrett County. And I also think, and agree with George, I think train left the station here on this issue. We only have a small portion of the Marcellus Shale. There was a lot of land leased in Garrett County. The companies have given up those leases. I think there's only a small portion of leases left here. And for anyone to even come back in here to drill, they're going to have to get leases. And I think people, one of the good things that's come out of this, and one of the things that you all have done and brought more attention to the issue, is that people understand it a lot better now. And so I think if companies do come back in here and they attempt to lease property from people, that they, number one, will make sure they get a fair value for it, and number two, they will have leases that protect their interest. And I know from my part, if for the land that I own, if I would lease that land, the lease that I'm going to sign, I'm going to make sure that I protect my land and not rely on some government regulation to do it, because I care more dearly for that land than I think anyone else. So, and I think if we look at Garrett County and the people that have owned land in this county for a long time, the reason we are the way we are, and the reason it's so desirable for people to come here, is because people have done and cared for their land. And you know, obviously, you can see when there's economic conditions prevail to the point that we have development, and development goes in spurts. And I agree that quality of life is a major beneficial factor in this county, and I would be one of the last guys that want to see that go by the wayside. And I would do anything that I can do to make sure that when the development, if and when it does occur, is done responsibly.
Thank you. Do you mind if I respond to the property rights issue? Just that I understand the property rights and sympathize with farmers, particularly those that are, they're working very hard. Oftentimes, that's just a second job for them. And I appreciate the fact that they perhaps would someday like to cash in on their mineral rights. I had sent a letter out to the Rural Maryland Council requesting that if there were a ban on fracking in Maryland, that perhaps there could be some sort of program that would reimburse them for the mineral rights on some level, so that the state would actually now become a competitor with the gas industry to preserve farmland, that we would put the value of farmland ahead of natural gas extraction. And also, that's just one point. And then the other I'd like to say is that because we don't have countywide zoning, the people that are affected by someone else expressing their rights, those people that can be negatively impacted, I think it kind of skews the property rights issue. If you're, say, an organic farmer, or you're a family that's surrounded by farmland, and this is your homestead that you've had in your family for 3 or 4 generations, and this is all you have, but you have no mineral rights, and your neighbors start to frack their land, suddenly you're exposed to this industrial practice, and your rights are kind of being violated just by virtue of where you live, and you really can't exercise your rights to protect yourself from that. We really have little to say about it. So I think that the property rights issue is, I sympathize with the people that were planning on someday cashing in on the mineral rights, but I also sympathize with the people who could be victimized by it. And they might not have the ability to move away if that would be their choice, just because they're not in that financial position.
Well, I grew up, I was I used to help farm this land where this college is right now. I grew up just about a mile and a half from here the way the crow flies. And when I was growing up, they were drilling for natural gas in this county. And my dad's farm was leased, and he got $1.25 an acre, and that $1.25 an acre helped him pay the taxes. And, I have 6 brothers and 4 sisters, and we couldn't make it on the farm anymore, and we went into cutting timber. But where my mom grew up, an accident my Uncle Charlie had, and he leased his farm, and they drilled several wells on it. And he got substantial royalty payments, as did a lot of people in the accident area, and that was a real big economic boom to those people living in that area. My Uncle Charlie got to buy his first new Ford, and so it was very meaningful for them. And I don't know of anyone in the whole accident area that would say that their quality of life was greatly diminished, or that there was any problems with their water because that they were drilling. And sure, it was vertically drilling, but the fact is, in the vertical drilling, you had to drill many more wells than you now have to drill when you're doing horizontal drilling. And so the surface damage at that point in time was greater because of the number of wells that they drilled. And there's 80 some wells now still in existence where they're pumping natural gas in the ground in the summer months and taking it out in the winter months in that what's called accident dome or the Risky Sands there. And so you go through the accident area and those wells are there, and I take people through there and drive them through, and I says, we're driving through, would you point out to me where there's a gas well? When you drive through where there's a windmill, it's not easy. It's not hard to find where the windmill is. But when you drive through where you can't, the normal person, if they didn't know anything about it, wouldn't know where the gas line is going through the field and that sort of thing. So we have infrastructure all across the country, and there's hundreds of thousands of miles of pipeline, and we have infrastructure and sewer lines that are running all through the town and everywhere. And my way of thinking, the risk to people's water and the risk to health is much greater from, number one, septic systems and sewer lines than it will be for what amount of fracking or a gas well drilling will occur in this county. So I think there's been so much fear put into this. The fear factor is there, and because of that fear factor, people have been scared away. And we've been talking about this for 8 years now. And we keep bringing it up, and we see the letters to the editor, and anybody buys a Republic and reads those articles about these horrendous things that are going to occur. And the fact, if and when it would occur, it would only occur on land that people were willing to lease. And even if it does occur, I think initially it'll be in the area of the county where they're close to existing infrastructure. And now with the amount of oil and natural gas, because of this practice that we've discovered in this country, I just don't think there's going to be a rush for anyone to come back into Garrett County to drill, especially when you look at there was about, Debbie's here, she can give you a better number, but I think it's about 140, Debbie Carpenter, about 140,000 acres at one point leased. I think we're down, around 30,000 or less now. Yeah. But it's greatly diminished. So even for a company to come, they've given up their leases, and they were leases that they got really cheap in a lot of cases. So even if the state goes through with the regulations, and even if the ban is lifted, you're not going to see a whole bunch of companies coming in here throwing up a whole bunch of gas wells, and it won't be a thing that's going to turn the county upside down. That's my belief.
No, I hope you're right. But as far as accident goes and all the drilling and gas extraction that they did there, that comes back to the whole economic issue. And we can see now that accident is not a booming metropolis. It does have a lifespan, and that's where it comes back to the economic issues. If you do displace a sustainable economy like tourism and recreation, and the fact that we do have clean air, fresh water, a possibility for farmers to farm organically, which is now a skyrocketing business, burgeoning business right now. People are willing to pay 10, 15, 20% more for the groceries, knowing that it's organically grown. If Maryland were an oasis from fracking, like we see in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, we could actually position this state above our neighbors and make us a place where people desire to relocate to, particularly the agricultural industry.
Have you ever farmed?
No, I haven't. I have a garden.
I grew up farming. I have a farm now. I'm not just making hay, and I know the farmers, and I know the culture of the agriculture agriculture community. And so, if the farmers would have a little bit of a boost, if they could get a lease and be able to sell the gas. You know, we're losing farmers left and right. There's a local farmer that's a great dairy farmer considering going out of business. Allegheny County does not have one dairy farm left. And so you're talking about organic farming, the number of their organic farmers, yeah, it's another way to farm, and it's value added, and our extension service is working to go in all those directions. But there are very, very few farmers in Garrett County anymore that truly make a decent living working on the farm.
Yeah, I understand that. That was one reason why I thought it would be important to try to support the farmers in an alternate way, as opposed to fracking the land, to offer them some sort of reimbursement through some sort of program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Guy.
Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. My name is Jim Guy. I am on the board of directors of Citizens Shale and the treasurer, and I'm speaking on my behalf tonight. Delegate Beitzel, this is just a comment from the last guy there. You know, there's a fellow over here in Hampshire County who's farming 3 acres, and he's grossing $150,000 a year. You know, he's not farming the traditional way, and there's a whole lot of, you could have a whole long conversation about farming. Okay, I wanted to talk tonight about the research you folks have done in getting to the position you've done on fracking. I wanted to first ask if you've done personal research, that is reading peer-reviewed papers, speaking with experts, people who have no financial interest in this issue regarding the economy, jobs, health, water, air, so forth and so on. And if you've done that personal research, I'm wondering if you could share the data and information you've collected. Either one of you guys.
Just consider, I guess the question is, what do you consider research? Have I actually went out in the field and done any testing myself or worked?
No, reading papers, studies, peer-reviewed papers.
I probably got a stack, maybe that high or more, and I read a tremendous number of articles on this. I went to West Virginia University to spend a whole day when they had arranged for a conference there.
Mm-hmm.
I've driven to Dimock, Pennsylvania, to talk to folks up at Dimock, Pennsylvania, where they said that where Josh Fox and Gasland said that they destroyed the people's water up there. And I got a kind of different perspective talking to the folks that live there about what's going on there. And there's a big, most modern and most probably the biggest investment in anyone in that community in Dimock is a company named Cabot Oil and Gas that built it. I thought it was a new high school, and here's their headquarters. And so, and I do have a little bit of experience on well drilling and groundwater and the geological formation in this county. So, and I also have, some early on background in the health field because I worked in cancer research in National Institute of Health for 3 years. And so, yeah, and I majored in biology and I grew up here on the farm. So, yeah, I have a little bit of experience in the subject.
Well, I was wondering if you could share that information with us so that we could review the same things you reviewed.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're talking about putting together some of this information. I've spoken Delegate Buckle, who's also, from Allegheny County, and a portion of the Marcellus Shale is located in Allegheny County. And there's only 2 delegates in the Maryland House of Delegates that actually represent the areas where there's Marcellus Shale,
mm-hmm.
or at least in an area where there would be any reasonable expectation of drilling. And there's only 1 senator that represents it. So you're looking at 2 of us out of 3 that represent the area of the state where there's any really likelihood of any drilling occurring. And you hear things about other shale formations in other parts of the state that could potentially have gas. But anyone in their right mind looking at politics in Maryland, even if there was some shale formation under Montgomery or Prince George's County with the population that are there's no gas company in the world that would even think about going in there to try to drill. So if there's any drilling for natural gas in the foreseeable future, it will be in Garrett or Allegheny County.
So we can count on you to share that information with us, the stack of folders you have with
You give us your contact information. I'll ask my staff guy, Chris, over there,
Great.
to go through my file, and I'll dig out what I got at home, and we can share that with you.
Great, that's wonderful, thank you. Senator?
I don't have a big file. I don't keep a lot of this stuff. You know, we got presented a lot of this stuff when I was on the commission, which I think you attended several of those meetings. So we had input from there. I try to keep it all up here. I know I've seen your moments once in a while, but then I look at various articles. I get articles sent to me that I look at, but I don't stick them in a file like the delegate does. So no, I don't have anything to send you.
But you've been reading and talking to people about this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Regarding the economy, do you have any concrete numbers on what this is what sort of economic impact this might have on Western Maryland? For example, what might happen to the average household income as a result of fracking? How's it going to make it better? How much, to what extent?
Well, you seem like a reasonable, intelligent person, and I think you can do the math. So just take the total number of acres in Garrett County, and even subtract the state land, which is approaching 100,000 acres now. I think we have 400-some thousand acres here in Garrett County. And just say if you would get $100 an acre, multiply that by, say, just 25% of the acres in Garrett County that might be leased, and look at the number you come up with. And then if they do hit the amount of gas that they anticipate that might be here, and when you just take 12.5% of the royalty on the gas that they would produce, and we're only looking at natural gas here, we're not looking at oil, so you know the danger of contamination from producing the product, from the difference between natural gas and oil is that the danger of spillage and things from drilling for natural gas is way less than it would be if they were drilling for oil. But we do have what's called the Utica Shale formation under here too, and I haven't seen any information or details on how much that may be under Garrett County. But now I understand the companies that are drilling now are focusing more on the areas of Ohio and Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, where they have what's called wet gas, and they're getting byproducts of that, like ethylene, propane, butane, and other substances that they have more money that they're getting from than they do natural gas. So,
well, I understand.
But economically, so if they hit, I've seen the numbers are available if you look at the estimates of what amount of natural gas they think is down here.
I've looked at that estimate.
If you would take that amount of gas and say they could produce it over a period of time, and take even 12.5% of that, you'll see what impact it has on the people that own those mineral rights.
Right, that's the people that own the land, that are leasing the land. I'm wondering about the average household.
Another place you can look, every bill that's put in has what's called a fiscal note, which the people in Annapolis do, based on assumptions. Just like a lot of things are based on assumptions. When I put the bills in to have a state tax on it, they did assumptions. And they computed how much money they figured out would generate based on an assumption of how many wells they thought might be drilled in Maryland. And not only for the state, but then they added, I think, the local piece to that, don't hold me to that, 5% in Garrett, 5.5% in Garrett County. The tax itself would generate millions of dollars if you go back and look at those.
Somewhere between $9 million and $30 million.
Well, you might have a better handle on that, not do look at enough numbers, but it was a substantial amount of money based again on assumptions.
Right, that was based on 5 different severance tax rates and 3 different scenarios, high, medium, and low gas production.
That's correct.
So,
which adds to the economy, by the way.
And I know that I've heard you say that every dollar you send downstate, you get 2 cents back here in Western Maryland. And I'm thinking that the tax revenue that's generated here, people in Western Maryland aren't going to see much. And the study that you sat on, the commission, the MSDI thing, the best practices said local taxes are going to go up with a certainty because of all of the expenses we're going to incur here.
The local tax would generate way more revenue than the state tax based on the bill I put in. Based on what some other people want to do, it wouldn't, but based on what I put in, the locals would generate a lot more money than that, and that stays in the economy. The county gets the money. They're going to spend it on things that probably do things they couldn't otherwise do because they don't have the revenue to do it with, which is all part of the economy. So, you know, you can sit here and debate. A lot of it's assumptions. You know, even if they do this economic study, some of that's going to have to take into consideration assumptions because they don't, until you do something, they don't know what it's going to be.
Right, I believe that. Can I read the thing you said you put together, making sure the local got the best tax deal and all that stuff? Is that something I could look at? Can you share that with me?
I'll put the bill in. You can read the bill.
Where do I see the bill? What's the?
Well, you go on the internet and go to whatever it is.
Can you give me that as well?
Bills, which
Name of the
we've
bill?
done several years
Great.
ago.
Okay, thanks. I know that you said several times that you support this issue because of jobs and economy along with property rights, because it's going to bring jobs to Maryland. I'm wondering if you can give us some sort of concrete numbers, maybe a range of the number of jobs, the length these jobs will remain, and whether the jobs are going to be filled locally or not.
I think you have some idea about the questions you're asking. You're asking some questions that are somewhat leading, and because I think you already have some idea what the answers to those questions are in the first place. But the thing is, I can't sit here and tell you how many jobs are going to be created, and I can't sit here and tell you how many jobs will be created locally and how many come out of state. But I would say this: if you had a brain tumor, you would want to go to someone that's a specialist in like Dr. Ben Carson, to take that tumor out of your brain. And so if somebody's going to come in here and drill a well, I would want someone to come in to drill the well that has expertise in doing that and it's something that they, in their profession, that they've been trained and know how to do. So because they aren't drilling wells in Garrett County, there isn't anyone here that, at least it's not likely that there's anyone here in Garrett County that knows how to run the equipment and the rigs and the drills in order to do the horizontal drilling. And there isn't anyone here there isn't any fracking equipment or anyone here fracking, so those people would come in. But there's all kinds of other jobs in setting up for the well, putting in the pipelines, and as you well know, there's a company here in Garrett County named Beitzel Corporation that does a lot of work with the natural gas industry in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and they're located and headquartered here in Garrett County, and they employ a lot of people that go out of state to work. And they would love to see some opportunity here in our own county to get some of those jobs, and they would get some of them if that would be the fact.
No, the reason I'm asking the question is because you have stated multiple times you support this position based on jobs and economy, and if it was me making that statement, I'd know a little something about how much, how many, what kind, so forth and so on.
Let me just elaborate a little bit. I was county commissioner at one point in time, and we have an economic development department, and we have a plan that we try to get people to come into the county to create jobs. And we have a tourist economy that we encourage people to build facilities that we can expand facilities that we have to bring more tourists in. And I was involved in bringing in numerous industries in the county that created jobs, like Closet Made, for instance. And they're employing people, they're good industry, and we have businesses that expand, like the Total Business Fulfillment, Phoenix Technology and Accident, and Garrett Container. And we've worked with those industries to bring people in, and they've indicated when they come in order to get some of the benefits or some of the enhancements or enticements to get them here, that they would create so many jobs. In some cases, they weren't able to do that because of the economy. And so, look at Garrett County, we're not gaining population. So if you take every segment of the economy in Garrett County, it's not growing very rapidly, and we're not keeping young people here, and we're losing our students, and we're losing educational funding. And so, we have an economic development department in the county that's trying to do something to boost our economy, and we can't rely totally on tourism if we're going to have a place where young people will continue to stay and raise their families.
I agree with you, and it's a problem experienced by many rural communities. It is a problem, and we need to do something about it. I don't disagree with you on that. This is kind of... This question is kind of takes a little context, so I thought I'd let you read it while I speak it. Last year, the AFL-CIO, located in the state of Florida, adopted a resolution to ban fracking. They did it for 13 reasons, including the potential for contaminating water, the oil and gas industry fighting protective measures to ensure worker safety in an industry that has 7 times the number of fatalities of other industries, exposing workers to dangerous toxic chemicals with no regulation of their practices, and not being required to provide doctors with information to research the effects of these chemicals and how to properly treat patients who've been exposed. The oil and gas industry currently does not hire union employees. Union officials have proven to be very careful to make certain safety is paramount regarding workers, and that the union employees provide health care, workman's compensation, or other benefits to ensure the workers have the opportunity to maintain their health and their ability to work. Given that, do you think the governor's regulations or that the governor ought to issue a law or something that should require oil and gas fracking jobs to be a union enterprise and or use union practices to ensure worker safety?
I would just respond by saying, is that a recommendation that you're making to us that we should consider doing something like that? This is something that you just presented, and I need to look at it a little closer. But I can tell you this: we work closely with organized labor in this state and in our districts. And what's happening and what they're realizing is that more and more of these environmental activists are doing things that are taking their jobs away. And we have an attack on coal, we have an attack on timber, we're having an attack on our farmers, and we're also having an attack on our paper industry here in Western Maryland. And I can tell you that we have broad union support. And the last election here, even in Maryland, has indicated that the union people are finally waking up and say, hey, wait a minute, our jobs are fleeting, our industries are dying, and so we need to do something to help these industries that are providing jobs. And the paper mill is one good example. And so I would say, yeah, we have a good relationship with the union.
Well, I'm just asking if you would make the recommendation the governor to require these jobs be union.
I certainly don't support that position. No.
Okay, thank you.
No, as a matter of fact, I met with the unions a couple of weeks ago. They do support fracking in the state of Maryland. Actually, one of them, I asked them to send the stuff, they hadn't sent it yet, did about a 3-year study. They send people to Ohio and other places. They studied people in the surrounding area before they started. They studied their people prior to starting to see if there's any health issues prior to them starting these jobs. And then they followed it up after 3 years, and they said they couldn't find anything where that impacted them health-wise. So the unions have looked at this. They support it, and these are union people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question is, this is for Senator Edwards. Senator, supposing a bill to ban fracking reached the Senate floor And suppose there was a provision in the bill to allow a county-by-county referendum to overturn the ban. Would you support that bill? Could you provide any additional comments that should be considered in a bill like that? For example, would corporate America be allowed to fund a campaign to influence voting on a referendum?
Well, the environmental side supports campaigns and pays for them on opposite positions of business and others. As I said before, I'll wait and see what bills are put in. I'll keep an open mind and I'll look at all the bills. And I'm not saying any more than that because I don't know what bills are going to be put in.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we have 2 more signed up. We're getting close to time. We got to close up shop here. So anybody else wants to talk after these 2, you can yell whenever we're done here. Judy Carbone.
Hello. Well, one of the,
Pull that down here, Judy.
yeah, I'm not as tall.
There you go.
One of the bad things about going last is that most of my questions have already been asked. But I guess what I just wanted to say was thank you for being here, and even though personally we may disagree a little bit on some of the things, particularly around fracking, I do want to thank you for everything that you've done for our community. One of the things that we have learned in recent times, we've been learning lessons from our neighbors about the fracking industry and the effects on not only environmental health, but also public health and economic health. And we've talked a little bit about the environmental and the economic. Instead of a question, I want to offer an invitation. Engage Mount Maryland is going to be doing a session on public health by inviting some folks from southwestern Pennsylvania to come and talk about some of the lessons learned there. And I think it's important that all of us learn from our neighbors and take the information that they can give us about what we should be doing here in Maryland. So I just wanted to offer this. It's going to be on Wednesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. at Aces Run down in the bottom level, sponsored by Engage Mountain Maryland. It's going to be 2 representatives from the Environmental Health Project of southwestern Pennsylvania. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Moe.
Thank you, gentlemen. Last session, there was a economic development bill that I think went to conference when they wanted to attach the sick leave bill, and it died in conference. I mean, in my opinion, our county desperately needs a statewide incentive bill, economic development wise, similar to the One Maryland bill that was introduced years ago, and we succeeded in graduating from that program, but we need to get something like that reinstated because we need to attract more business and communities, and we need that leverage. So I'm asking for that consideration, and I think there might be something in the works with the governor's office, and could you please elaborate on that?
There will be a bill put in by the governor, and I think it'll be great for our part of the state. I can't elaborate a whole lot because they want to do that, but I can tell you it'll replace One Maryland, and maybe some other programs we have. I've been harping on this for years, trying to get a new program in place, get rid of some of these old ones that are heavy paper-wise. You got to spend a lot of money up front, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you need to make it plain and simple. Hardly any paperwork. We don't have to hire any new people to take care of it, use what we have, so it doesn't cost the state basically any money. And it'll be across the board for everything other than retail. It'll be a tiered system. We'll fit in the tier that gives us a little more benefits that hopefully allow us to be more attractive to businesses to come here. It'll also be for expansions. I can tell you in the tier 1 it'll be 10 employees or more. Not the 25 that's under One Maryland now, which is beneficial. So I think once you see the bill, that you'll be able to support it pretty good. And hopefully we can get it passed, and there won't be a bunch of other ones stuck in this year that, I think convoluted what we tried to do in the past.
Thank you.
Hey, just want to mention to everybody, Dave was just recently awarded, received an award for his outstanding service to his community in Western Maryland. What was the name of the award, Dave?
It was the Greater Good Award from the Greater Cumberland.
So congratulate Dave on that award. And another thing I'd like to say about Dave, he's worked tirelessly on trying to improve the highway system here in Western Maryland. I think it's critical for infrastructure, in particular highways, if we're going to have any meaningful economic development. And 219 North is moving ahead, and fortunately, Dave has just worked, he's worked years and years to move that ahead. Now he's working on 220. He knows more about transportation funding and the federal system and the state system, and so Dave, would just like to commend you on and thank you for your work on that. It's been a real volunteer effort that he's put into this, and so Dave, your work is I want to recognize it and thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and you know, gentlemen, it can't be done alone. With your help, we're getting things done, particularly in Maryland. Right now, we have some holdups in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, but again, it wasn't me alone. You needed all of us working.
You were the spear. You were the head of the arrow on the head of the spear there.
I was the asshole that wouldn't let up.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. Get that on the record.
We got it recorded, don't worry.
Okay. Yes.
Hello. Sorry. Please understand that if I didn't really feel strongly, I wouldn't be here because I hate public speaking more than most things that I ever do. I live in Allegheny County.
And you are?
Jeannie Gibbons, I'm sorry. Thank you. Jeannie Gibbons.
Gibbons or Gibbons?
Gibbons. Gibbons with B's. Yes, thank you. I almost hate after that nice ending to go back to fracking, but my heart tells me I have to, and as a mother, I feel like I have to come up and speak. Again, I'm no expert, but after attending and speaking to you all were wonderfully nice to me at the last meeting, so thank you for that. I made some phone calls because I felt like I should find out more stuff. And one of the things that is concerning to me is in the University of Maryland Best Practices Study, as it was originally put forward, so I am told, and I read the summary of it, but not the whole paper, because I'm not really very good at reading giant scientific papers, but I did read the summary of the original one. It was included a kind of, I think it would be called a comprehensive plan, where it would cover, in order to approve drilling, it would have to cover all the way through to how the waste was dealt with at the end. And my understanding that was removed. Is that true?
Is this the Eiselman?
It was the University of Maryland study. It started at the laboratory in Western Maryland near Frostburg, in Frostburg, and ultimately went downstate. It was, I think, commissioned by the O'Malley administration. Anyway, I was told that the end game sort of was not included in the current thoughts or the panel that came out and spoke in the auditorium there. Sorry, I wish I knew all to speak better to you all, trying my best.
You're talking about the Department of Environment people that came up and presented the proposed rules and regulations?
Yes, I believe that is it, thank you. But anyway, I'm told that the long-term how you deal with all of this was no longer considered important or attached to drilling should it go forward. And that is concerning to me because I feel like we shouldn't just go into this. Clearly, it is a divisive issue. Personally, I'm tired of all these divisive issues, but one must
do it once Hart tells them, so here I stand. I guess what comes back to me again too, is I brought this up at the last one, and people seem to resonate with it, is, you know, it seems like there's this big hurry, and something I heard someone on the panel, one of you all said this evening was that the gold rush was over. And my understanding is what that means is there isn't a whole ton of people trying to frack in this area right now. I know the gas prices are very low. I'm concerned about the fact that most of this gas, as I understand it, is slated for export. I have I think legitimate concerns that someday we might need that gas. We as Americans might need it. And I really do think that the science to get at it will only get better and better. And given that there seems to be sincere risks, I mean, it doesn't take much of a Google search, and defined peer-reviewed studies, and again, I don't have a degree to read the scientific papers, but I can read the summaries pretty well. It seems like there is a lot of concern. And if we slow this down, I mean, the gas has been there for millions of years, and citizens are strained. I mean, this is neighbors. We're all neighbors here, basically, right? You know, if some of us stand to get a lot of money, but we're watching our neighbors shudder in fear, and honestly, I'm really afraid of this. And I'm not alone. I know a lot of people who are, a lot of mothers. I know several people who are considering moving out of the area. And I can tell you, we love Garrett County. We live in Allegheny. It's wonderful there too. Please understand that. But you know, Garrett County is kind of big and open. And right now, I just can't see that we would consider moving here. It's just too scary. You know, you see what happens to people with surface rights when mineral rights get the advantage. I can only just tell you that, speaking from my heart, I've done some research. I've spoken to people at the lab who've worked on this study. We know there's no guarantee in life anyway. Of course, I'm not suggesting that, but it seems like the risks here for the gain are very big. And there's a woman who spoke at the last meeting who brought in a lot of evidence about similar sized areas that had gone boom and bust and were suffering economically in spite of having gone forward with fracking. And lastly, I guess on my part, I'm probably sick of hearing me, is the chemical mixture. As it was told to me, it's more important to know the exact mixture of the chemicals that are used in fracking, because every company has different ones. And maybe they change them depending on where they're fracking. And without that exact composition, it's harder to trace. So if you have the exact composition, what's explained to me is it's sort of like a fingerprint or the DNA of that company. So if this would ever go forward, which I'm hoping it won't, but it may, I would say that it's incredibly important, from what I've been told by people who have studied this, that we have not only what's in those compounds, but we have the exact portions so that if there is contamination, we know exactly where it came from. The end. Anything to make you
Well, if we ever get to drill in Maryland, they will have to tell the state what's in that mix. Now, they may not tell them the actual percentage of each one because it comes under the federal law, but they will have to tell us what's in it or they won't get a permit.
Okay. Well, what it was told to me is it was the breakdown of how much of what is
Well,
in
it's
it.
sort of like, I think, like with Coca-Cola, they tell you what's in there, but I'm not sure they tell you the percentages of what's in there. It's a, what do they call it? Proprietary information, which comes under federal law, as I understand, and I'm not an expert. But for someone to get a permit in Maryland, they will have to tell us what is in it. And the state MD will have a copy and they'll give it to local health people so they know what's in it, or they won't get a permit.
Okay. And the long-term thing, the long-term, it's like, I want to call it a comprehensive plan, that may not be the right term, but the follow-through, like before drilling starts, shouldn't we have an end plan for what happens in the aftermath, so to speak?
The proposed regulations had a provision in for what's called comprehensive master plan. For any company to come in here, they would have to prepare a master plan and outline what their game plan was in order to drill. you know, one of the problems with that is, number one, even when they come in, they're gonna have leases, and after they get in there, they're gonna have to lease, and so if they don't get a lease, they can't outline where they're gonna go to a particular piece of land until they know that they have a lease on that land, so, but the plan does require that they prepare a plan and advise the state as part of their application of how they intend to operate in the county, and probably things to include where they plan to put pipelines and connect to the system, that sort of thing. The problem I see is it's going to be hard for any company to prepare a plan that goes into the future of their operations without them even knowing where they may eventually end up if when they do drill and do hit the amount of product that they would anticipate to make it feasible for them to operate here.
Does it cover, would it require them covering how they would dispose of the waste?
Certainly all those things will be required. Permit conditions by the state. The Maryland Department of Environment already has regulations in place for drilling operations in Maryland that occurred long before horizontal drilling became a factor. And the state, I even have an Attorney General's opinion, says that Maryland Department of Environment can set any conditions on the permit they feel it's necessary to protect the health and welfare and the environment of the citizens of the area.
Okay, so I'll get elaborate, but short answer question, yes, they won't get a permit unless they tell us how they're going to dispose of the waste, and it has to be approved by the department.
Oh, so that is part of the great plan. Okay, I don't know why I thought that was removed. Or the person who told me it was removed thought it was removed, maybe. So anyway, you know, like, I guess that's the bulk of it. I mean, I do feel like a lot of people are, I hate to use the word afraid, but you mentioned the fear factor, and I think it's legitimate. You know, I heard someone here talk about, I think it was Friendsville and protecting the water for the town. Like, those are the concerns that I'm hearing among friends of mine who are not here, but.
I kind of hesitate to say this, but this is one of the things that kind of gets me a little bit fired up. A lot of the people that are making statements and saying things that come into the area that express fear and concern about how we operate up here. When you look at what's going on in the other parts of the state, and particularly Montgomery County and Prince George's County, and so, you know, in the Washington suburban area, they take 400 million gallons of water out of the Potomac River about every day. They just completed a project down there, a development called National Harbor. It's on 360 some acres of land. What they're doing on that 360 some acres of land would use about as much water and equal as much sewage production as all of Garrett County. And all they had to do to get a permit was apply for a water and sewer tax in the Washington Suburban Sanitary District, and that's on 360 some acres of land. And now the MGM facility, gaming facility is about to open down there, which is great, and it's great for that region. It's going to produce a lot of jobs and a lot of economic benefit. But they don't have any problem getting the water that they need for that project. And so if they take the 400 million gallons of water they pour out of the Potomac River for just that region of the state, and think what they do with it. They turn, on average, every day, 325 million gallons of that into sewage, and then they pass a flush tax that we help pay for in order for them to approve their sewage treatment plants and to prove the discharge in the Potomac River. But that would equal us drilling 100 wells every day, and if we would drill every well that probably would be drilled in Garrett County under this plan. Numbers range from 300 to 600 wells, and more likely the area on private property would be around 300 wells. That's 3 days of their water usage down there. And in 2002, I think it was, there was a drought, 1 or 2, there was an extreme drought when the Potomac River water volume dropped where they take the water out at Great Falls. down to about 150 million gallons a day. They're taking 400 million gallons a day. So guess where they got their water? They called up in western Maryland, the Jennings Randolph Lake and the Savage River Reservoir, and on numerous days we discharged 385 million gallons of water. So they would have water to use down there. But when we want to use 3 million gallons or 5 million gallons to frack a well, it's like, what are you thinking? How can you possibly destroy that much water to drill a well? And they do it day in and day out to the tune of 100 wells. So, you know, when they come up here and tell us what we can do and how we can do it and where we can do it, and when you look at the impact that they're having on their own community, maybe they ought to take care of some of their own problems before they come up here and tell us how to live. And that's what kind of gets under my the burr under my saddle every once in a while.
Okay, I mean, I live here, and the people I was talking to are local. They weren't people coming up from downstate.
Yeah, just to add to that, we try to get permits to get 100,000 gallons for our local community water sources. It's like beating your head against that wall back there. Baltimore City, when their water runs low out of Liberty and Pretty Boy, all they got to do is turn a valve. They don't have to get an appropriations permit or nothing. They got a permanent one forever. They just turn a valve and take it out of the Susquehanna River. We can't do that.
Okay.
And it's because, my personal opinion, just as Delegate Beitzel said, they want all this water for DC area and metropolitan Maryland. And one of these days they're going to run out of it. They're going to come up here and look for more places to build dams, which personally I don't have a problem with, because that would provide recreation and a water supply locally if we, tap into it. But that's what you're going to run into, or they're not going to be able to do anything down there after they exceed the flow of the river. And now they just come out to West Virginia, doesn't have to get approval from Maryland. They can take water out of the Potomac River without getting permission from Maryland.
I don't know.
Now, it has nothing to do with fracking, but I just wanted to add that to the comment.
Sorry, I was like,
We
I
need to
didn't
finish
need to
up
get
here
off that.
shortly.
I mean, I guess the people that I have spoken to, who are friends, friends, people I know mostly, and some people I called on the phone, it isn't, my understanding, at least from my perspective, is it isn't about the usage of the water, it's about the fact that a lot of it cannot be reclaimed. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what's upsetting people.
The companies are making great strides. When the difference between drilling on the East Coast and drilling out in Texas and those areas, there's different geological formations, and it's quite different. In most cases out there, they're drilling a lot of time in most areas for oil, crude oil. But in the water that they use for fracking, the numbers vary, but it's 3 to 5 million gallons a well, but it depends on how far the lateral, the horizontal bore goes. And some of that water comes back. A lot of it stays down there. There's different percentages, and probably every well varies, but the numbers I've heard ranges from 20% coming back up to 50% coming back, and maybe more. But what does come back, what the regulations in Maryland will require, the current regulations, is that be totally contained, that not be put in surface reservoirs, that they will have to put it in the storage containers and move it off-site, and either take it to recycle at another well or take it to an approved disposal facility. There's a disposal facility in Fairmont, West Virginia, that they built specifically for fracking waste, and they're working now on facilities that they can bring on site and treat the water on location. But they're continuing to advance the technology, and they're continuing to make improvements in handling that wastewater. But one of the things that in West Virginia, at that location where they treat the wastewater, one of the byproducts that they get and utilize is salt. And so guess what they do with most of that salt? They take it out and put it on the roads for a de-icer in the winter months. So, there mustn't be anything in it that dangerous that they can't spread it all over the highway. And obviously we're dealing with major issues in this county, and many major issues we talked about earlier about the salt contamination because there's so much salt dumped on the highways of people's water wells that are in the location in the vicinity of those. So, yeah, there are problems, and they're dealing with them. They will continue to deal with them, and we'll do the best that we can possibly do to make sure it's done as safe
Thank you. I
and as
appreciate that.
responsibly as proper.
I appreciate that, and I know you all work hard, I'm not doubting that, and I do believe that you love the area. I guess I'm just gonna want to go back to, since we agree that the science is improving and that there are problems to solve, I still haven't heard a good reason why we're in such a hurry.
Well, excuse me, depends on someone's definition of in hurry. You know, we've state of Maryland's been looking at this for 6 to 7 years now. Just Maryland.
Right.
Other places have been looking at it longer than that. They've been fracking out west for 50 years or more. Now, a lot of that started as vertical and not horizontal, because that only came into play, what, 10 years ago, maybe, something like that. That makes it a little bit different, but it's been looked at, it's being looked at, it'll continue to be looked at. As been mentioned, technology changes every day.
Right.
And when the technology changes, if and when we ever drill here and we have rules and regulations in place, you need to change rules and regulations to keep up with technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? Very quickly, we gotta
just
go.
want to
He's
point
running
out
out of
to the
film
lady
there. He
that-
wants to get everybody on camera, so.
I just want to point out to the lady that a couple of years ago, the governor of Colorado testified before the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works that he had consumed raw fracking fluid, lived to tell about it, worked, testified under oath before federal committee, and there's been all sorts of talks about studies. The major study, John Hickenhooper, something like that. He was recently on 60 Minutes talking about marijuana legalization in Colorado.
See what happened to him?
You try that too?
He got on 60 Minutes.
Drank too much fluid, and now he's getting stoned.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's that terrible, he wouldn't be alive today. That's my point. And
Okay,
regarding the federal studies, the U.S. Department of Environmental Protection did a 4-year, very, very intensive study of the fracking industry and didn't change and propose any rules. But that's the Bible when it comes to studies.
We need to move on here, because I got a 20-minute wrap-up on what it is, so yes. Real quick.
My name's Tom Stark, and I'm glad everybody's worried about the water. My big problem isn't with fracking, it's with the dredging of Deep Creek Lake. We already know that the main body of the lake has their own water system now because their water is coming off from their wells out of the lake. They start dredging the lakes and these coves, what's going to be the guarantee? I'm not asking for 100% or anything like that they don't pop into the water aquifer and ruin somebody else's wells, the farmers, or anybody else that's around. There's never been a study done that I know of. Now I've heard all this stuff about fracking and all the studies that's got to be done. Now here's this stuff on the Deep Creek Lake, and I find all this fracking stuff just a ruse of what's actually happening with the lake. But that's my biggest concern. If they pop into the water aquifer and ruin everybody else's wells, we don't have the money to get our own water system. I lived in Mountain Lake Park when Wendell was on the water commission, the sanitary district, and he proposed a universal water rate for people in Deep Creek Lake when that system went in. We were paying $40 from an ad valorem tax that had been put in back in the late 60s. And they're probably still paying. And I said then, if they can afford a $186,000 place, which is about the average cost of a place on the lake at that time, they could afford a $100 water bill. But I know the farmers in Garrett County, if they don't have water on their property, they're not going to be able to afford it. And when these water systems are put in, it's assessed on the footage of their road front, and it gets really costly. When they dredge Deep Creek Lake, which I know is going to happen because this is the cash cow, that's all you got to do is read the letter you get. But you're going to have sediment control, and I'm going to use the words from the Surgeon General and all these people. They get there and say this might cause cancer or could. All this sediment's going to get washing through the lake, end up down in Friendsville, everywhere else. in the fish, in the aquatic life, all the aquatic plants that we always hear so much about, save the day, we gotta have these green grasses and everything, that's all gonna be gone. But all I'm asking is, I just want to get it on record that I said it. What's gonna be done? Is there gonna be a study done? That's all. I mean, I'm more worried about my water. I could care less about Deep Creek Lake. I said 10 years ago, well, when the state of Maryland bought the the land, they said, I'd be glad I didn't have $11 million because they'd be swimming on the landfill for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think everybody's probably said enough. I do want to say, I probably should have said this way earlier, but people left. But, you know, one of the main issues here has been about fracking. People like to twist around what people say. Or I heard this, I heard that, you didn't. And I asked the question specifically to the person here, name me some colleagues, and you notice he didn't name any of them. I would just say I've always said I'm a believer in this country should be energy independent. The sooner the better. I'm tired of countries holding guns to our head telling us we're going to charge us whatever for oil or whatever. We have plenty of resources in this country to be energy independent, and the sooner the better. So I support all of the above, with caveats that you got rules and regulations in place to make sure they're done appropriately and environmentally sound, and that depends on everybody's definition of that, and everybody's different. It gets a little bit you know, you can disagree on issues. Some people like to try to use the bully pulpit to do that. I think I've been very open on this issue ever since it became an issue. And have expressed my viewpoints on it. You know, it gets a little trying at times when people say you don't care about this place or that place or people of Garrett County or whatever. I'll just say this, and this has nothing to do with who's lived here longer than anybody else. My great-grandparents came to Garrett County. That means my grandparents lived here, my parents lived here, I live here, my kids live here, and my grandkids live here. So I know some of you think I'm crazy, but you think I'm going to support something that would knowingly would destroy where I live? I don't think so. I hope the next several generations of Edwardses live here. But I've always supported this fact. We need to do something to attract businesses here to pay family living wages, ladies and gentlemen, or we're not going to have people to live here to work for the places at the lake who use high school students, because student population continues to drop in this county. Even when I was growing up here, a lot of my colleagues in high school had to move away, not because they wanted to, but because economics weren't here for them to stay here. They'd come back tomorrow if they could get a good job here. And if you surveyed the high school students today, I would be willing to guarantee at least 80% of them would like to stay here, or come back after they sowed some wild oats. And I think most of you who know that agree, whether you admit it or not, but I think you would agree with that. I've always said we have a triangled economy in this county. You know, it's changed a little bit. 3 points. Agriculture on one, recreation and tourism on another, and other businesses on the other one. Recreation and tourism is not the savior of this county. If it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, would you not think that the population of this county might have increased over the last 40 years? Well, guess what? It's been stagnant for 40 years. Been around 30,000, up and down a little bit each time we do the census. So if we don't do something, and I'm not saying fracking's doing it, and I have nothing in this, I gain nothing. I'm not employed by any gas companies. I own half an acre in the middle of town. We're in the town limits. So I, personally gain nothing if they come here. But I do look at some of the issues that we express. Now, kept talking to certain people about our colleagues down east. Well, let's put it this way. We know our colleagues down east probably better than anybody sitting in this room, and I'll sit here and tell you some of them are in this for self-service to themselves. And they could care less of what happens out here otherwise, because the committee that came up here, T&E, screwed up the pilot bill, which would have helped us tremendously. But they're going to come up, they want to tell us what to do in this instance, which is fine. That's the way the process works. I'm not going to mention names. You can look back at some people that supported this, and that's why I say it's self-serving. What did they try to do after they got involved here in future runs for offices, for example? Because they wanted support from people out here and that. So I just tell you, look at some of this with a little more open eye. What's going on there? I have changed some positions on this over the last 6 years. I've been looking at it, being on the commission and otherwise. So I try to listen to everybody, as Delegate Beitzel does. And I'm running off the mouth here, and he can finish it up. But it's you know, we try to do the best we can. And those of you who are sitting in here are parents whose your children had to move away, or maybe they wanted to, but no, a lot of them would like to stay here. Ladies and gentlemen, we all need to work together to get businesses here in both of these counties, Allegheny and Garrett County. You know, we're 2 of the 4 poorest counties in the state of Maryland, median income. Allegheny's 38, last numbers I looked at, 38,000. We're 44,000. And if you want to look at wealth of a county, to me, the measurement is median income. Not assessable base, because Deep Creek skews all that when you look at assessable base. I mean, that's great, gives us more money that way. But the people that live here are the ones you count the median income in. And we need to do something to get businesses here. We got some good ones here, and they're expanding. We need to get more that pay family living wage so our people can stay here and raise families and put students in the school system. And those who have to leave because of economics can move back here. But, you know, there's no reason we can't discuss this in a normal fashion. On some of this stuff. I can get wound up too, and I can yell. Not sure good what that does to anybody. You know, if we live in a democratic democracy, a representative democracy. You might, and I found any better government, you can tell me there's a better one anywhere in the world, convince me. But in this process, you talk and you negotiate stuff. You might convince me your way's right, I might convince you mine's right, but at least we can have an open discussion and talk about it. Just like Delegate Buckle said, or meeting in Allegheny County, you know, we just disagreed on certain aspects of this. Not every aspect, but certain aspects of it. So again, I apologize for then I'll ask Delegate Beitzel if he wants to say anything, and I'll wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Well, I think George, you just pretty much said most of the things that go along the same. I have sort of the same thought process. I know many people are upset with my position on the fracking issue. I've been open and above board on where I stand on the issue. I think one of the most disturbing things for me is when people disagree with my positions. Rather than being disagreeable, they try to smear my good name and make statements that I'm only doing it for my own self-interest and because I have land and I have a farm and I can enrich myself. You know, I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I grew up a short distance from here with a family of 11 children, and we didn't have a whole lot. I kid that you know, the mice left our house and went to church because we were so poor, but we weren't poor because we had parents that really loved us and tried to raise us right and gave us a good work ethic, and everything that I've ever done, I've worked hard at, and my wife and I have been fortunate. We've been one of the families in this county that I can say we've been fairly successful, but we've worked at it. But one of the things I've always done is given back and given service, and I've served this county for a long time, and I think I've put a lot back into the community for the benefit of the community. So I'm not going to be one that's going to do something that would reverse those many years of positive contributions as I see them. So the thing that really bothers me, though, in this issue of fracking and this natural gas development thing, are the people that have kind of split the community. In the Autumn Glory Festival, there was a sign that says we need to come together. But the way I see it, there's only one way to come together, and that's to go completely over to their side and agree with it the way they see it. There's no give. And so when there's no give, they then tend to attack you and try to discredit your good name. And so that's what's really troublesome for me. And so we will continue to work on the issue. We'll work through it. I would hope that people will be more understanding, and we can be disagreeable. I mean, we can disagree but not be disagreeable. I've never seen an issue that kind of split the community like this one has. So thank you for coming out. Thank you very much for your input. You know, and for those that have opposite viewpoints, I will work hard to try to understand your position, and I will listen to your concerns. And I think overall, in the end, when we look at these bills and we look at this, I look at the total picture, and I look at the constituents that put me where I am, and I hear from them, and I see them too. So wish everybody a Merry Christmas and enjoyable, happy and prosperous New Year.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. Have a safe trip home. If we can help you with anything on anything, get you information or whatever. I don't want you going out here. When I mentioned tourism and recreation and said it didn't savor the county, it's very important. It's one of those 3 points, okay? But we got to do more to get that one other point up so we can keep people